Well, welcome. The panel topic is Keep It Moving. My name is Jonathan Kilman, Converge Public Strategies. We're a public affairs firm that focuses on mobility and transportation innovation, which is appropriate for this conference. The topic of the panel today is one that I think blends together a lot of the themes that cross a lot of the different companies that are here and the consultancies that are here, and certainly the folks in government. We've seen a significant increase in demand for e-commerce and delivery and movement of goods in a way that probably for many of us would have been hard to anticipate even a decade ago. As a Miami resident, I live in Midtown nearby, and I think the flow of goods through that neighborhood, even though it's a relatively new neighborhood, was not something that was anticipated when the neighborhood came together. And so today we're going to talk about the way these issues are affecting all of us. How can we best optimize the flow of goods from the first mile to the last mile so that customers and businesses can be content and that we engage in efficient urban logistics. I'll introduce our panelists today. First, we have, you're sitting out of order from my notes, I apologize. Ganapathy. He goes by Viggy, his name is Vignesh Ganapathy, is Vice President of Public Policy with Serve Robotics, where he leads public affairs engagement for the future of robotics and on-demand delivery. He most recently served on the policy teams at Match Group and Postmates, where his work focused on antitrust, the future of work, privacy, robotics, mobility, and how tech intersects with our communities. Through 2018, Viggy headed the Policy and Racial Justice Project for the American Civil Liberties Union of Kansas, building a community-focused civil rights agenda in the Midwest. He's a graduate of University of California, Santa Cruz, UC, University of Pacific, McGeorge School of Law, and a 2021 Harvard Kennedy School Fellow. Next we have Alejandra Alex Argudin. Alex has served as the CEO of the Miami Parking Authority since 2020. In her capacity as CEO of the authority, Alex implements the strategic plan for the organization and seeks opportunities to foster economic development, growth, and prosperity for the residents of the city of Miami. Prior to her role as CEO, she served as COO for 9 years, leading parking enforcement operations and customer service, supervising a staff of over 130 and managing a $40 million budget. She has a Master's of Business Administration and is a member of the Executive Committee of the International Parking and Mobility Institute. She holds a Certified Administrator of Public Parking Designation and is a U.S. Green Building Council Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design accredited professional. That's a lot of credentials. John Ellis is the president of Lacuna Technologies. In that role, he works with public agencies to help them prepare for and manage the ongoing explosion of technology and transportation. He has cultivated expertise in new and emerging transportation technology and how it's changing the way that cities and transportation authorities manage the public right-of-way. He's an engineer, software developer, and business development veteran with more than 30 years of experience. As a former executive at Motorola and global technologist at Ford Motor Company, he led or participated in teams that built many of the innovations we see today and connected vehicles on the ground and in the air. As I mentioned, I think a lot of the changes we're seeing in the flow of goods has challenged neighborhoods that never anticipated the way that goods are being moved around through our communities today. And one of the things I think, the questions this raises is who has the responsibility for solving the problems that are created by all of the solutions that are being offered in the marketplace. Ultimately, who are the stewards of this? Is it are the companies that are being brought to the marketplace, or is it the folks in government who should take primary responsibility? Is it a combination of the two? But to begin, let me pose the question to each of you. What caused what I think feels like a sudden spike in demand or this sudden increase of congestion or a sudden increase in the rapid delivery of goods in our communities? Was it just COVID-19 or is it something deeper than that? So start with Viggy and maybe.
Sure. I think this has been a question that's been top of mind for everyone in this room and everyone in city halls across the country. And, over the last 10, 15 years, we've seen this proliferation of big box retail online. There's been this blueprint of an Amazon warehouse or a ghost kitchen or any other sort of warehouse from which goods are being transported across our cities. And once I think the broader commercial infrastructure saw that this was happening, small businesses, mom and pop shops, all wanted to be able to compete in this climate against those larger institutions. So since then, I think what we've seen is that people have started to kind of take it for granted. Yeah, let's find a way to get our goods, our food, anything that we're looking for on demand quickly.
Great.
So for us, I think COVID-19 just brought to light a lot of what we're experiencing even before COVID-19. So in the city of Miami, we had started to see already the traffic patterns on our curb change quite extensively with Amazon and the food deliveries and the ride sharing. But when the COVID-19 hit and people were staying in their apartments or in their homes, especially us that we worked in the downtown core, what we saw was the traffic increase just because of the food deliveries that we're getting and the Amazon packages that we're getting to the buildings. And we needed to start addressing how do we keep traffic flowing. And I think that has continued to be the case. We are now taking a look at how do we better manage our curb as it relates to loading zones, because there's a lot of residents who haven't gone back to work and they're working out of their homes and traffic continues to flow and now traffic has become even heavier. So how do you address all of that? We've had to take a look at our system to see how do we address it and how do we make it better for the residents of the city of Miami. So I think that COVID just shed a light on something that was gonna come anyways.
Yeah, so Jonathan, just to build on what Alex said, right? If you're a student of history, before 1970, all things were delivered in the U.S. via the United States Postal Service, and it was true pretty much in every country, the national system. And then a young MBA student from Harvard wrote an incredible paper with an opportunity and an idea and failed a class because the teacher said it was impossible to do. His name was Fred Smith, and today it's FedEx. And from the beginning, Sears catalog, people buying, it's been there from the beginning. We want to get stuff, and we want it to be brought to us. And so when you ask, why do we see such a rise today? Sure, COVID's there, et cetera, but it really is Amazon and the ability at 2 o'clock in the morning to just slide right and say, buy, and get it to me the next day or the day after. And I don't want to blame Amazon, all of this, on the on-demand opportunity. And so when looking at that, none of the infrastructure, none of the policies, nobody ever anticipated that. And so there's frameworks, the structures, the law, we're using quote unquote antiquated or older frameworks with these newer opportunities, and that tension is being seen at the curb. And that's why you're seeing this, it's tension at the curb for usage and space. Very little space, a lot of demand, more people than dirt.
I appreciate it. And so just to further set the stage, I think what's, those of us that live in big cities, and I think each of us lives in large, dense urban environments, and probably a lot of people at this conference do, but I think it's worth, Alex began to touch on this. Certainly, Vicky, you have a particular perspective, but could you maybe speak a little bit about the types of solutions we're talking about? What are we beginning to see proliferate that's causing this sudden shift in urban environments? And then we'll talk later about what's happening outside of urban environments, but give a broader discussion of what are we seeing in terms of solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. So for a little bit of background, Serve Robotics is a company that came out of Postmates, the on-demand delivery platform's special projects division. And we developed a small sidewalk delivery robot that operates mostly autonomously, but with some human intervention as well in certain situations in order to deal with a specific problem, which is that currently we move 2-pound burritos in 2-ton vehicles for less than 2 miles, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we wanted to see what other opportunities there were for us to build a solution that can be more tailored to the form factors of what people are ordering. throughout the pandemic, I think we've seen two effects that have essentially led to this growth spurt in this industry. As Alex mentioned, there's been this a lot of concern around contact and non-contact deliveries, but in addition to that, there's also been significant labor constraints in the labor market. And as a result, I think in any sort of crisis like this, you see a ton of investment that goes into ways in which we can address the economies of the future. A lot of folks have gone and decided this is a good opportunity to upskill, especially during the pandemic when student loans, for example, were put on pause. And there are a number of new available jobs at companies that operate these emerging technologies. I know all the companies here are probably hiring for roles, and I think what we're seeing is both a reshifting in the labor market as well as a reshifting around people's expectations around how they get their goods.
I think as a government entity, and not only us at the Miami Parking Authority, but the cities and the counties are also finding ways of providing the service to the residents by allowing the bike share and Revel, which is shared mopeds and shared bicycles and the scooters, and you have ghost kitchens. And now we're talking about EV tolls, which is something that is in our near future, something that we would have never imagined. We've been talking about it for a few years now. I think in the next 5 years, we're going to be sitting in this stage or coming to this conference and talking about the flying cars that are taking goods and services and people from point A to point B. So I think that to be a top tier city and being wanting to be the lead on tech and innovation, the government entities have to be able to provide the foresight for what's coming and be able to provide those kinds of services to the residents if we want to continue to grow our city as a leading tech hub, because I think that is something that's very attractive to the people who are coming down here.
So the focus of my city focus, product focus, I might just start suggesting, Jonathan, there's innovation happening in regulation and policymaking. Cities are truly the interface between the public right-of-way and the citizenry. And so it is cities who are burdened and both blessed with the opportunity to interact. And so the problem, though, that cities have is that the problems they face are actually global in nature. To solve this, no one city can just say, this is what we're going to do. And so there's innovation happening around how cities come together to actually collaborate. There's work being done from cities to say, let's not talk about piloting, let's talk about implementation and figure out who goes first, but then who's quickly behind them and making the commitment to do this, and then trying to set up a posture and face for companies who are coming in and saying, great, I do know that these cities are doing this. I will build infrastructure and I will build product to that. Because quite frankly and honestly, cities right now are only left with tools that were designed for people to move, not even product, but for people to move. They were designed from the early 1900s. They've been evolved, but not totally changed. And so we need to contemplate transformation, and cities are at the forefront of trying to do this. So you're seeing innovation in all sorts of arenas to try and solve this particular problem.
Great, thank you. And you raised a few questions I want to touch on, including changes to infrastructure. Briefly, want to touch on so we've all seen delivery bots or delivery devices roving around CoMotion, but that's a very different thing than these delivery devices moving on sidewalks, where you have things like strollers and babies and people of all sorts of shapes and sizes and bicycles. So this question is directed to Viggy so that we can actually understand how is a delivery device like this in autonomous mode going to rove around sidewalks, and then we'll later talk about the infrastructure, but tell me how that actually works.
Yeah, so this is the $1 million question, right? I think over the last couple of decades, we've seen a lot of investment going into AVs as in terms of robo-taxis or vehicles that will be using our streets, long-haul trucking, for example. But the amount of research and work that needs to go into building that level of autonomy takes a long time. It needs, we have multi-jurisdictional partnerships that are taking place between the federal government, the state government, and other institutions. The sidewalks are quite a bit different. Sidewalks are not governed by state departments of transportation generally. They tend to be governed by local municipalities. And they're also a location in which you're not dealing with the same sort of shared language around how you operate in the public right of way. On streets, everyone understands what a dotted yellow line or a dotted white line means. They all understand what directionality looks like. Sidewalks don't include any of that. Someone who's walking may decide they just want to stop in front of you. There may be a dog that's running out of someone's yard. So with that many variables, it's actually an opportunity for us on the automation side to really look at human behavior itself and not just be reliant on the codex that's currently in front of us, but to build a new codex for the various types of mobility that exist out there. And I think the tip of the spear on automation is really going to be in this space, because we've already seen these conflicts come up. When someone's riding an electric scooter, they're not using hand signals, so you don't know whether the person's turning left, turning right, or coming to a stop. And I think developing these types of devices requires us to think about what that codex looks like and to participate together to set some standards for how that ought to work. And I'll give some examples a little further in, but that's sort of a high-level overview.
So before we move, I have a question for Alex on that, but does anybody else have a comment on that? Because I'm going to kick it to Alex to maybe stir up some controversy, if we could. Because I guess, I would say, great, well then what's the role of government? Because you're saying I'm going to put these delivery devices on sidewalks, and we know that there's a bit of chaos happening because a person may stop and start, et cetera. And your goal, not just yours, but all the companies that are deploying these technologies, is to let us get out there and do it. Alex, what role does government have in policing and saying, well, this is great, but we don't just want things to be efficient, we want them to be practical and safe, and what role does government have at this point?
So that's a great question, and I may say something that may be controversial, but we're not on one unified platform. So the city has jurisdiction or has rolled out programs that are city-driven, and the county has programs that are county-driven, and there's things that the Miami Parking Authority has partnered with certain companies that we manage and we take responsibility for. If there's no communication among the different agencies, that could become chaotic, and I think that we miss the boat there sometimes. And as someone who's worked for government for a long time, I think that that's something we need to continue to work on, because that's what's going to help us continue to move forward these technologies that are very helpful to our community. And as things continue to evolve, we need to evolve with what is out there. If we don't keep the communication open and we make these things work for us, all that happens is that it either kills a program, which is not good for anybody. And so I think it's education. I think we need to educate our legislative body as to what these things are and how they could be helpful for a community. And I think we fail in that realm, and I think we fail sometimes in the education to the public as to what the expectations are. Because if we do not get there very soon, I do feel that there are certain really good programs that work throughout the country that we can make work here. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It exists already in some places. And John and I have this discussion quite a bit on things that we can bring here in this city in particular, which is so, our mayor is so supportive of the technology and the things that we want to move the city forward to be a top-tier city. But these things have to exist. We need to coexist with them. While bringing the technology here, we also have to make sure that our residents are taken care of. It cannot be at the expense of the resident. So that's something that I think is very important to us, and keeping the lines of communication open, that we can move forward, having a plan, a strategic plan as to how we're going to roll these things out. We know they're coming. They're all here. They're here in this conference. And so if we foresee that, then we need to start planning ahead.
John, I know you're not going to back away from any controversy, so do you have any comments before we go to the next question?
It's not controversial. I mean, to Alice's point, it's cities are cities are challenged, and they need to transform. We're in digital transformation. It's one-sided right now. It can't be. And cities are then challenged to how do they fund it? How do they support it? Because quite frankly and honestly, cities don't pay the way the companies pay. They don't attract necessarily the skill sets that are needed at this point in time. Right now, there's multiple cities that we're working with, and we say you need the following person. Like the closest person we can get to is a database architect. Like, but this isn't about databases. This is, and they're like, but that's all I have. So there's a massive amount of change that the cities have to undertake. The problem is that cities are fractured, even within the cities. Number two is the economics don't work right now for cities. And number three, quite frankly and honestly, there is so much rapidity and change on the private side that they can barely catch up to something that's going on, right? That's not controversial, it's known. I don't know how we solve it other than allowing cities to transform and experiment. But as we've learned throughout the course of these last 2 days, right, the bar for government is super high. And government's not allowed to fail like private companies are and to learn and iterate. So it's a big set of challenges. I don't know how we get there other than the kind of collaboration and dialogue that Alex is talking about. But there's no silver bullet for it.
So you raised the question of digital transformation, and I want to get to that in just a second. But before that, I want to ask this question. How do you find the balance between allowing this innovation to occur and allowing the failure to occur, right? We know that if we don't allow these new technologies to come and compete and fail and evolve, they will never get to whatever the potential solution is. But at the same time, you have this responsibility as a government to ensure that things work, and as you said, can't fail. So how much are cities paying attention to the development of standards by large organizational bodies? Is it the focus there, or is the focus more local? Let's make it work here. Is it somewhere in between? Is it too early in the curve to be developing standards at this sort of broad-based standards across cities? Where are we in that curve? Do you have any sense of it at this point? Either one of you, or any of you?
No, I'm happy to. So, as an engineer, I always like to tell. Actually, I tell my kids this all the time. Like, when I say I'm an engineer, what it really means to say is I'm lazy. I like to copy things. I like to reuse other people's exercise. I want to reuse. And so part of our journey as we've been talking to cities is like understand some of the incredible innovation that we see today that has been enabled by some of the empowering technologies, a mobile device or connectivity. They were never perceived beforehand. And so how is it then that innovation happened, right? So we go back in time, and is there a model to look at? And right, wrong, or indifferent, there's a few of them, and some of them are the developer models, whether it's an Android store, Apple store. I have something, and I'm welcoming innovation on it, and I'm going to create some ways for you to access it, and I'm going to create some guardrails and guidelines, and go for it. Let me see how it works, right? That's a very simplified form, but applying that to government, they already have that in some form today, right? All the analog signs are ways for you to interact with or interface with the public right away today. And as Vicky said, it's very well defined in every other area, but the sidewalk, grant you that. But it is very well defined. We know what these symbol signs mean. I don't care what your language is, where you come from, and it's been universally pretty much adopted now because of global trade. So is there a lesson to be learned there that can be applied to cities? And LA, Miami, and a few of them think there is, and so they went and they created the Open Mobility Foundation to try and do that. Can we create a variant or experiment, very tentatively with digital platforms? Can we contemplate the city broadly as a platform with a very unique perspective of stewardship, safety, equity? Can we do that? And can we actually invite innovation that we don't have to actually know beforehand how it's going to work or how it's going to work out, but we can create the guidelines to make sure that if it is failing, it fails in the right way for the residents and citizens and doesn't over-index on one form of factor or another. It's an open experiment. We'll see what happens with it, but that's the kind of transformation that will solve or begin to solve some of this conflict.
So you're saying Alex has her job cut out for her?
I think she does. I think, and she's the right person for it. She's fantastic.
Listen, we sit on the OMF board, and we are part of that organization, and I also sit on the IPMI board, which is the parking industry, the largest parking industry association. So they created their own standards called APDS that talks about parking standards. But then I also know that OMF is also creating standards for the curb, there could be a conflict there. So I married the two. I said, hey, let's meet each other. Let's talk about this, because I think we need to integrate. And that's where the communication happens, so that there's not two standards that we're running parallel on. And now they have become members of the OMF to start talking to them about integrating some of the stuff from the APDS. It's very important because all this affects parking for us, and that's important for me. So if I'm working on something that is going to be answered on how do we better manage the curb, the parking standards need to be part of that. If we put all that in digital policy, everything needs to talk to each other. Everything needs to be understood across the board. And so I think that was a very important relationship that we're beginning to build between the parking industry and, the OMF. So I think those are the important little steps that us as government can take, so that we can create a better standard for people to follow. We're not recreating the wheel. We're just making sure that we're all following one guideline, and we don't have 32 standards that nobody can actually follow.
Well, thank you. I think the examples you began to bring up are, we know what a white curb versus a yellow curb means. We know what a stop sign means. These are static, rule-based, analog concepts that express our policies in physical form, and they're so ubiquitous they effectively become invisible to us. But as all these things change, we can engage in dynamic, digital communications and rules that are no longer in physical form, but maybe vehicle-to-vehicle communication or infrastructure-to-vehicle communication. And so I turn to Viggy because in a practical sense, you're having to do this. Are we going to have a particular type of sound when a device is moving backwards versus forward? Who's going to know what that sound means? How do we put that out there in the world? What are you going to do about it? And are you going to go lobby these organizations to adopt standards? Or are you going to say, we just want to put it out there and let society choose?
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky because we find ourselves doing a little bit of both, right? There's areas where there are vacuums, and there are areas where there's a lot of work going on. We were just thinking about the work that OMF is doing, the International Standards Organization is working on standards for sidewalk robotics. And in each one of those instances, I think, we've reached this moment now where cities have had to respond to Airbnb, they've had to respond to rideshare, they've had to respond to food delivery. And I realize that this conference has a lot of private operators, but I think sometimes when you're meeting with city officials regularly, you find that they're a little exhausted. Sometimes they're like, why, you're coming in here, you're telling us what we should be doing, like, go test somewhere else. Like, do we need you? And that requires us as operators to think a little bit differently about these challenges in advance, through the design process, through our collaboration before actual deployment. How can we make sure that we're answering those questions? The end consumer of a mobility device is not the person that's using it necessarily. When we have a sidewalk robot that's out there, the person who's buying the burrito that's inside of the robot only interacts with the device for a minute, 2 minutes. The rest of the time, it's traveling on sidewalks. There are people in wheelchairs or people on walkers that are having to navigate around the device, having to figure out whether the device is coming toward them, away from them. And that means that for us, we need to win favor with them. We need all of those individuals to feel like this technology is actually benefiting their lives. So how do we do that? I'll give a couple of examples that we invested in early on that actually make a difference here. You mentioned sound. All of our early testing happened at a senior living facility in Northern California. The reason we looked at a senior living facility was really for two reasons. The first is that we're dealing with a population that does not necessarily have emerging technologies target them as a demographic. And the second is that we have to navigate with and around people who may have ambulatory challenges, people who may have trouble being able to identify what the device is doing at any given time. And some of the feedback that we got in our outreach was that if someone is hard of vision or blind, they want to be able to tell whether the device is moving toward them or away from them. So a constant sound doesn't enable them to do that. If you have intermittent sound, someone can use echolocation. They can determine which direction the vehicle is moving in. Or, what happens if the vehicle goes and approaches a curb cut? I think when we're thinking about the shared language here, it's very, there's going to be some operators that'll say we should just all line up orderly. There'll be some other operators that say, each operator should kind of go out on their own, try and get to the lip of the curb cut to cross the street. But if they're all lined up in an orderly fashion, if someone is trying to walk the other way as cross traffic, they're not going to be able to go around the device. If all of the devices are waiting to go into the intersection, you've now just blocked this right of way for whole hosts of people. So what we did was we designed the device to come to that curb cut and then move back, provide a little bit of space. It signals intent, but it also gives an opportunity for our neighbors, our community members, to actually see that we're being respectful of the norms of the sidewalk. So this requires a little bit of work on our ends as private operators, but I definitely urge all of you to think of our problems not as ones that are necessarily B2B facing or consumer facing. Our consumers are our communities. We are deploying in the public rights of way, which means we need to view those people as the key stakeholders in our design decisions.
So to build on what Vicky just said, we had done something early in our working with cities where we took a city official and we asked them, we wanted to teach a point, which is going to Vicky's point. And so what we did is we helped this person download an SDK for Android and do a Hello World simple program. And we made it so that this person would get pissed off. You want to do Hello World, great. So what language do you want to present in? And English. Okay, great. And then and so all these questions were asked. Finally, the frustration got to the point was just do this and let me know. And so we stopped. We're like, great. Now the teachable moment. Let's go back in time. Let's go look. Every question I just asked you, you saw as a technical question. Yet now let me ask you the exact same question through the lens of who you are. What language do you want to present? You said English, but you're yet in a city where 40% of your population doesn't speak English, so is that the right language to choose? We asked about font size. We asked about color. Are we colorblind? What's your rating? And so the takeaway is design of technology is actually design of policy, and policy and tech are intertwined. You can't actually design technology that will ultimately work unless you're taking policy in the beginning. The real issue is cities or the policymakers aren't in the very earliest conversations. They're not in the earliest stages. And so what a city sees is a thing showed up with a company and a model, and they're like, I don't like that. And you're like, well, I'm sorry, man, I got investors, I got a commitment. I'm too late. So for the cities, and part of what the OMF conversation is, how do you get into that point so that policymakers can actually weigh in? Because they do want good outcomes. And it turns out that maybe the tech says, you know what, can we inform the policy better? Can we make the policy different? Policy turns around and says, can I make the technology better? So it is a shared collaboration conversation, and it can't happen when the product is showing up. It does have to happen far earlier, and we've never had that structure that actually allowed for that collaboration before.
So we've talked about the digital transformation, and we talked about policies and behaviors and the way that the technology interacts with people. Let's shift away from the digital and over to the analog and think about infrastructure briefly. You mentioned a device going up to a curb cut. Do we need to start rethinking infrastructure? I mean, for years we talked about bike lanes. Do we need to start talking about delivery vehicle lanes? Do we need to start thinking about different size curb cuts to accommodate for vehicles? Is it a bit of a chicken and the egg, right? Do the devices need to follow the existing infrastructure? Do we need to retrofit infrastructure to fit the new technologies? Where are we with that? And who's going to pay for all of it?
Well, I mean, just look at the road system that we have today, right? Again, student of history, the big federal roads was a defense project. It was, right, the first rules were if you were going to pour concrete on an interstate, you had to have 5 miles of perfectly flat, cleared away so that planes could come and go. And that informed so many of the standards that then came to our cities and others. It's not just a rethink of bike lanes. It's like, what is transportation and what is the role of the infrastructure that we're meant to provide it? And this is our sidewalks. Why are the sidewalks 5 feet wide and not 10 feet wide? Might they have to be bigger? How big should a lane be? How many lanes should it be? I mean, all of it has to be rethought. And that's a very big project. And I don't know where it will happen, but it is being surfaced. For example, Vicky said, I got to worry about the sidewalk. Well, maybe the sidewalk's too small because we're trying to do more than was anticipated when we built sidewalks based on the fact that we had roads that we were trying to do. So it's a bigger conversation, but one that needs to happen and probably can be funded by collaboration of the companies who want to actually profit on top of the public right of way. There's probably some form of partnership that could happen.
Well, I said, Alex, I want to hear your response on this.
So I have some developments that we're working on right now, and one of the things, and as you know, the downtown Miami has become, it's denser by the minute, and there are a lot of residential units that are going up. Every day you hear a new approval of a new residential building, and I'm talking about 1,000 apartments. I'm not talking about 50 apartments. And so what do you do with all that density? And one of the things that the city was working on was enticing a developer to be able to use shared loading docks within their development so that the neighboring developers, if they don't have enough loading, they could load off the street. That is something that we manage day in, day out. My staff is sitting here and they know all the challenges that we go through. Like I said before, for the first time in a very long time, we're taking a look at all our loading zones, especially in the core of downtown, to see what shifts we need to make. That shift may constitute us losing parking spaces. That may be very valuable to us, but we need to do it because if not, the retail, the restaurants will not survive. They don't have a place for pickup and drop off for deliveries services. They don't have a place to load and unload. And we gotta be cognizant of that, you know, and we've had to take a shift also in our revenue. Okay, do we only think about making revenue and providing a space and turning over space, or do we also think about the livelihood of these businesses that had spaces right in front of their businesses and all of a sudden a bike lane came? Well, okay, then now we answered some of the needs of the community, but now we killed these folks who just came in and needed that loading space or wanted that parking space right in front of their building. So how do we coexist, right? And so I'm working on 2 developments right now as the parking authority, and one of the things that is absolutely a must for us is that the loading docks are big enough so that people could get off the street and into the buildings so that they don't have the traffic issues. We could provide those services to the residents that are gonna be above that parking structure, and to the neighboring businesses and buildings that were not built in that fashion. And I think the city is moving towards, which I think is a brilliant move, is to force the hand for these shared docks and loading areas so that we can continue to have traffic move and we can actually address some of the issues that we're experiencing. There's just so much space on the street that's available these days. How do you make all of it work? Whether it's with the bikes, like you said, and the scooters and the bots, and how do you make it all work without somebody getting angry? We have to learn how to coexist, and the only way we can do that, I think, is by being friendly with our neighbors as well as developers. And if somebody you want to see the thread, you know, of the fabric of the downtown, for example, for us, change, or Wynwood, which has grown immensely too, I think that we all need to collaborate more so that we can help each other out and try to resolve some of these issues.
Yeah, I kind of want to pick up on that point because you were mentioning that area of conflict when cities are looking at installing bike lanes or changing infrastructure, and businesses may oppose it because they're worried about losing a parking space. They may be worried about what their foot traffic looks like after there's a ton of loading zones in the area. And I think one of the challenges that we tend to face in the private operator world is, for many of us, I think we have a tendency to look at public policy and regulatory engagement as business development with some greenwashing on top. We look at it as like, hey, we're gonna do a little bit of good and make some money. And unfortunately what that does is it really, I think, creates the same conflicts that we've seen in communities that have responded poorly to rideshare, or have responded poorly to electric scooters, or have responded poorly to Airbnb. Because it's very easy to think of tech companies as being located in Silicon Valley, somewhere else, even though we have a device that's on the ground in your community. We are interfacing with small businesses that exist on the ground in the community. And that means that for us, we need to start thinking ourselves as active participants in those conversations. So when cities are thinking about what their sidewalk widths look like, businesses don't have to feel threatened, because we can go to those businesses and say, we'll be able to increase your sales through this process as well. There'll be more orders that'll be able to come in and out of your restaurant. There'll be less conflict that's happening at your doorstep, and it's gonna be a much more pleasant experience for people who are visiting your restaurant if the sidewalk in front of it is larger. And that also requires us to go to pedestrian advocates, to bicycle coalitions and advocates as well, and see ways in which we can collaborate. The challenges that we face are not unique to us. If a sidewalk delivery robot is having difficulty operating on a sidewalk, someone in a wheelchair is probably having difficulty navigating that sidewalk too. And that means that for us, we need to actually show up earnestly and say, look, we have the same challenges you do. We understand that, yes, we are a business, but this isn't just trying to do some social good on the side. This is about us figuring out how we can all coexist in our evolving city and hopefully help everyone feel more included along the way.
Thank you. I think it's clear that there's this interesting tension between the private actors that want to do this and the governments and their obligations, but at the same time, it's a necessary integrated relationship. You can't work alone. It's not going to work. So being mindful of time, and as when I thought about the shared loading, I also began to think about all the power needs and potential shared charging stations and things like this. And so these are problems and solutions that will no doubt evolve. But I want to ask a final question, and then maybe I'll ask you as you're answering to maybe just offer any concluding thoughts, which is, we're talking about, again, large urban, densely populated cities. Are these solutions being deployed? Are they just for cities? Are these things that can be helpful in other environments? I'll leave us with that and any concluding thoughts that you may have.
It's interesting. I feel like we're in this period right now where we went from sort of an older design of the ways in which cities operated, where you'd have suburbs that acted as sort of satellite homes for individuals that would then go into the city to work and then go back out. And the sort of drive toward on-demand commerce has kind of really shaken that relationship. There's just as many orders for on-demand delivery that come out of suburban neighborhoods, exurban neighborhoods, rural communities, and the needs remain in those locations as well, especially as we see rural broadband start to proliferate across our country, and the challenges surrounding last mile delivery are just as attenuated in those rural communities as they are in cities as well. And so I think what this means is we can't really put all of our eggs in one basket here. We need to be able to encourage innovation in communities of all form factors, and not necessarily view ourselves as competitors. I get asked sometimes, is Serve competing with Neuro? And no, we're not. It's a different device. It occupies a different pathway. Are we competing with Coco, who's here as well, or KiwiBot? And not necessarily. These are all different sized vehicles. They can coexist, and they can all service different areas in a myriad of ways, or be able to deliver different kinds of goods. So I think it's very important for us to think about this, about these challenges in a more collaborative way, and hopefully be a little bit more forward-looking, because then we're not just going to cities trying to fight for RFPs and then trying to get exclusivity that way, but rather we're actually coming to cities and offering them a solution that enables them to build a city in which all of us feel at home.
And to that end, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. Every city is having the same conversation that we are here today. As I said, I sit on the one of the largest parking association organizations, and we have a lot of collaboration from throughout the country and even internationally. That we all talk about the same things. We talk to Ohio, we talk to Seattle, we talk to LA, and all of us are working on something similar but different, and then we all learn from each other. And there's a lot of municipalities and a lot of little cities that may not be able to afford to do what we're doing now, the experiments. Not everybody could afford to fail. we could afford to fail and start again. And we're fortunate in that realm. And I've always said, whatever I can take from the experience and whatever I've learned, I've always been one to want to share with other cities. So whatever we're really good at, I push it onto the cities so that they don't have to go through reinventing the wheel. I think a lot of cities love to do that. And I don't know why, because it's very easy. We're all going through it. So if somebody's been very successful, and I take city of LA, LADOT, Salida, is someone that I've talked to a lot about the scooter program that she's rolled out. And something that, I want the city to be successful here to do the same things, and they don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already been done, and those are tried and true, and things that we need to, as a government entity and someone who really wants this community to flourish and really bring technology to this country, the way that we're doing it now, I think it's important for us to be able to share and collaborate. That's the only way that this is going to be able to happen. We don't have all the money in the world to be spending and wasting when others have already done the work for companies like yours to also be successful in our cities.
I would echo Alex's comment. Actually, Alex and Vicky's comments that collaboration. One of the things and one of the points we try and get across in our practice and in the conversation is that there's a good phrase that a friend of mine quoted years and years ago: "Code beats paper," and it is a term to just say implementation beats contemplation. Implement, and I think the space that we're in, cities can't fail easily, but cities collectively can actually watch and mediate each other to ensure that the failure is not prolific. And so collaboration in an environment that allows for technology development, that allows for the interaction that Viggy is looking for. I mean, Alex pointed to LA and the scooter program. There's 10 companies, 70,000, 57,000 vehicles, 503 square miles, billions of dollars of revenue flowing into the city. Companies are seeing success. I mean, it is an absolute sort of, we'll say, model for true city and opportunity for operator collaboration. And so for me, future looking, it would be great to see that for all modes and over time, right, as we contemplate, because what new modes? I mean, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought about scooters. I wouldn't have thought about robot or delivery bots. So what won't we be thinking about like 5 years from now or 10 years from now? So for me, the collaboration, but the collaboration at the city level. Don't wait for federal government. Collaborate at the city level, but collaborate at a community.
Thank you. I think it's been fascinating to think about where we're headed and realize how much more work has to be done in collaboration. If there's one takeaway, I thought the word that we would hear over again would be congestion. It's good to hear that the word we're hearing over and over again is collaboration. Vicki, Alex, and John, thank you for your insights. It's been great to hear from you, and appreciate you all being here to listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.